Hello there, friends. It's Jimmy Maverick. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Maverick podcast. And today we are going to talk about the starts and sits for week 3. And we're also going to talk about what players are really giving my fantasy teams problems right now. So let's get into it. And here we go.
Listen up. It's time for the Fantasy Maverick podcast, starring the guy who's going to help you win that fantasy championship, Jimmy Maverick.
Hey there, friends. This is Jimmy Maverick. Welcome to another edition of the Fantasy Maverick podcast. And hey, before I begin, if you could please give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, share this with your friends, and of course, subscribe. All those things really help me out with the YouTube algorithm, and I do very much appreciate it. And we're going to cover a couple of topics today. The first one is that we're going to talk about is what players are giving you problems so far. What players did you draft with very high expectations, and they are seriously underperforming those projections and putting your team at risk? I got to say, man, I've got a couple. Now, I had another good week. It was pretty good. I went 4-2. And although I do have one of my leagues at 0-2 right now, I'm not as concerned about that team. But my standard points league, this team has seriously underperformed expectations. And I am at 1-1, currently ranked. Let's see here. Where is it? I'm currently ranked 10th in points. Yeah, even though I'm 7th on the rankings, I'm 10th in points. Not a good situation. And all my teams that are starting to struggle a little bit are having problems because of some of the players I picked. And the first player that's giving me the biggest problem is the one that I have the largest share of, and that would be Justin Herbert, who has managed to put together some pretty good stats as far as his passing yards go, but has been abysmal in the touchdown department. And because of that, he's been sub 20 points each of the first 2 weeks of the season. He is really hurting my leagues. I've got him in 3 leagues right now. And the thing is, I had this guy tagged as a regression candidate. In my app, I had the little regression tag next to his name. He got the penalty for that. He was still a recommend. He was still a 3-star player, even with the regression tag. So I ended up taking him in 3 of my leagues. I got him pretty late in all of them. I got him in 8th round, I think in 2 of the leagues, and I think 7th round in another one. So I was happy at where I got him. I'm like, this is a pretty low, he's a pretty low risk play here. I think he'll do fine. But the dude really needs to show up and start getting some touchdowns. If he had gotten 2 touchdowns in each of the first 2 weeks, I wouldn't be complaining because he would have been over 20 points and it would have been like, okay, he's fine. He's good for my team. But right now he's seriously hurting my teams. So I need him to show up. The next guy that is hurting my teams, I've got him in 2 of my leagues, is A.J. Brown, who I had huge expectations going into this season. Now, I'm not too concerned about A.J. Brown. He's gotten pretty decent volume through the first 2 weeks. I think he has 17 targets. He just hasn't done much with them. And so that's what we need to see. It'd be nice to see him have a week like Julio Jones had last week. I think he still has it in him. I'm not worried about it, but I really need him to start performing like the second-round pick that I took him in both of these leagues. My third problem player is George Kittle, who, again, has gotten pretty good volume, but just hasn't done anything with it. No touchdowns, and this is a guy that I took in the second round. I got him in 2 of my 3 FFPC leagues, which are the tight end premium. So he hasn't been horrendous, even though that line last week was awful. It wasn't too bad in my league because he got 1.5 points per reception. It was still bad. He was still at like under 10 points. But anyway, I need these guys to show up. I need these guys to start doing something quick because all those teams are struggling, whereas the other ones where I don't have these players are doing just fine. Again, checking the strength of the team overall, still ranking out very well in almost all of my leagues. I am still projecting out as the number 1 projected point getter for week 3, so that's very good. That standard points league, though, man, they have me projected at what do they have this? I guess I didn't write it down, but I'm like projected now 7th for points. And this is a team that has, obviously I have Herbert, I have A.J. Brown, and then I got the tight end situation where I have yet to score a point. So it's a hurting team. I need it to turn around in order to start doing something in this league, or I'm going to just crash down to the bottom if I lose again. So that's my biggest concern But overall, I got some teams that are doing great, first in the league, first in points, and so I'm very happy with how things are panning out so far. Also, my best ball leagues, I've got several that are in the money, top scoring points. I can't talk today. My top scoring team in across the league in like, I think I got 6 of like the 14 I'm currently in first place. So that's pretty good too. So we'll just have to see what happens there. But I want to hear from you. What players are causing you problems? And what should we do with them? You know, I'm not ready to cut any of these guys. I'm not going to cut Herbert. I'm not going to cut A.J. Brown. I'm not going to cut Kittle. I might try to institute some trades where I can. FFPC doesn't do trades, so I'm kind of stuck with them. But I really need them to start showing up and doing something because it's killing me. I'm just, come on. I need to score some points here. But let's move on to the starts and sits. So one of the good news about starts and sits this week is I think last year I had 5 fantasy graveyards where it's just like these are going to be low scoring games, low fantasy projections. They're not going to be good for your team. This year there's only 2. This week there's only 2. So let's just get through them right now. These are the two teams that I think are going to be the 2 games that I think are going to be the worst for fantasy this week. The first one is the Bears at the Browns, and we've got a lot of problems going on both these teams. First of all, with the Bears, you've got the potential start of the rookie Justin Fields. So a rookie is going to hurt Allen Robinson, and it's going to make things more difficult for the offense to score points. And Allen Robinson has already been struggling. You know, I've got him on another one of my FFPC leagues, so he's another problem that I've been dealing with. But as far as starts and sits, you want to minimize the starts off of these teams. But I don't think you can sit Allen Robinson. You can't sit David Montgomery. So just go ahead and start them. But I wouldn't start anybody else on these teams, frankly. I don't think you can. But it's not much better on the Browns side. You know, the Browns, they lost Jarvis Landry. He's on IR. OBJ apparently is coming back this week, but I am not going to start him first week back from, him being out for the first 2 weeks of the season. I got to see what he does. So I'm not interested in that for a start. Really, the only players you can start on the Browns right now are Chubb and Hunt. That's it. And really, Chubb's the only one I'm comfortable with. Hunt had kind of a disappointing game last week. It was nice that he got the 5 targets. That's the one thing that's making me say, okay, go ahead and start him. But I would not expect too many points to be scored in this game. So just prepare yourself. I am also hating on the Saints at the Patriots on Sunday afternoon. Oh, man. I mean, again, this is a situation where outside of the running backs, you can't start anybody. There is no good startable options here. On the Saints side, obviously start Kamara. On the Patriots side, obviously start Damian Harris, but that's it. There's no one else you can start on these teams. No tight ends, no running backs, no quarterbacks. Don't do it. Stay away from all of them. I project that both these games will be disappointing for fantasy regardless. So just prepare yourself. Now, there are a number of blowouts that I'm currently looking at that again, great for one team, terrible for the other. Let's go through them. Thursday night football, we got the Panthers at the Texans. And again, this looks to me to be very much a one-sided game. All the offensive talent is on one side of the ball. Of course, on the Panthers side, you start CMC, you start DJ Moore. And I have to say, I love the Carolina defense as a streaming option this week, and they have been really good through the first 2 weeks. So I'm thinking this might be the kind of defense that you hold on to after this week. But it's a great matchup. Obviously, the Texans lost Tyrod Taylor. They now have some quarterback named Mills that's going to be playing. I think there's opportunities for turnovers there. So it's a great situation. So go ahead and do that. I would sit Robbie Anderson and Terrace Marshall. I don't trust their volume right now. Very, very risky. Very much boom-bust options. They'd be better choices for if you're going to do daily fantasy, but don't start them in your league this week. On the other side, Texans, the only player I would even consider starting is Brandon Cooks, and that's strictly a volume play. We've seen how many targets he's gotten. But he was getting them from Tyrod Taylor. Who knows how Mills is going to do in this game? but you can't start anyone in that backfield. It's a total mess. There's no other receivers you can start. Nico Collins went on IR, so there's even less receiving options. That's another thing that kind of helps Brandon Cooks. So he's the only one I can recommend for that game. All right, so the next blowout game I've got right now is the Colts at the Titans, which is a Sunday early game. And although I don't expect this to really be a blowout, I think one side clearly has an advantage over the other side. That would be the Titans having the advantage over the Colts. Of course, you're going to start Jonathan Taylor, and I think Michael Pittman is a good choice, as the Tennessee defense is pretty bad, and they should both be productive. I don't trust the volume on any other Colts player, but on the other side with the Titans, of course you're going to start Derrick Henry, right? I mean, he had such a fantastic game last week, but I wouldn't expect a repeat of that against the Indy Rush defense. So just be aware of that. He's still going to have I think he's going to have a fine game. And I also very much like Julio Jones and A.J. Brown. It's good matchups. It would be nice to see A.J. Brown really put in a solid wide receiver one performance. We have not seen that yet. I've already told you how much I need him to come through. So that's part hope on my part. And I think as far as Tannehill goes, I still think he's too risky to start. I would not start him. Put in another quarterback. There are some good streaming options that are available this week. We'll go over those as we get to those games. The next game is the Ravens at the Lions, the Sunday late game, not the night game, but the afternoon, Sunday afternoon. And the Lions are terrible against the run. So you saw what Aaron Jones did to them last week. Well, now I'm good with going with Tyson Williams. I think it's going to be a great game for him. I like Latavius Murray as a flex play. And I like all the Ravens here. I like Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews, Marquise Brown, all starts. Now on the Detroit side, you got Hawkinson, who's been fantastic through the first 2 weeks. Really love the volume he's been getting, and Swift. But everyone else, I don't think you can. I don't think it's going to be a good game for them. Although I got to say, Detroit is feistier than I would expect. They put up a fight for the first half of the game against Green Bay, but then Green Bay just took over. But anyway, they can score points, and that's the thing that's important. They've been scoring. They've been productive. And so, yeah, again, Hawkinson and Swift, I think, are solid. I would not start Jamal Williams. Next up, we got the Cardinals at the Jags on Sunday afternoon. Boy, another great game for the Cardinals. They have been killing it so far. I think they should continue to have another awesome offensive performance week. You start Murray, you start Hopkins, you start Edmonds, and I think you can start Rondale Moore as a flex. So I think they're all great. The Jags should be playing from behind, so I like Marvin Jones. You know, you've got Latavius Murray dealing with an injury right now. So Marvin Jones clearly has got the most targets last week, and you can't trust Chark. Chark was totally uneven from week 1 to week 2. I don't even want to deal with that. And then James Robinson should also remain on your bench against this defense, so don't start him. We've got the Washington football team at the Bills on Sunday afternoon. Washington is certainly facing a lot of challenges right now. They've lost their quarterback. You've got Antonio Gibson not being utilized the way we thought. There might be some issues related to that foot issue that he had during the preseason, but he certainly has not been doing great. I still think you can start him. I think you obviously need to start Terry McLaurin, but I'm not thrilled with starting anyone else. I mean, J.D. McKissic did great last week, but that might have just been a one-time deal. I'm not ready to start him because he did nothing in week 1. He had no volume in week 1. So, again, he's just too inconsistent to trust right now. I keep him on your bench. Don't chase last week's stats. On the other side, on the Bills, of course, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, automatic starts. But I feel that everyone else is really risky right now. I mean, Washington defense is pretty good. And so I'm not really interested in starting Beasley, Emmanuel Sanders, Devin Singletary, Zach Moss. Again, too much inconsistency to trust right now, so I would just stay away. Let's go on to the next game. So what do we have next here? Let's see. We got 2 more blowouts. Next one, Jets at the Broncos. going to be great, man. Another tough matchup for Zach Wilson. That makes it hard for me to trust anyone. I might put Corey Davis in if I don't have anyone else, but that's it. That's the only player you can start on the Jets side. And here's something interesting, man. The Jets defense is ranked 3rd against the pass. So the only receiver I would really trust for this week is Cortland Sutton as the volume play. And I think, but they're very weak against the run. So I really like Javonte Williams. I think this could be his breakout week. So I think it's a great time to start him if you got him on your team, if you got him on your bench right now. I do in one of my leagues. I think I'm going to plug him into the starting spot. Got to get something going, right? But I would sit the rest of the Broncos. Broncos defense is a good choice again this week. I think there's going to be, again, good turnover potential opportunities, and even with Chubb out now, Chubb is going to get ankle surgery. So anyway, I think they'll be fine though. So it should be a good matchup for fantasy. The final blowout game is the Dolphins at the Raiders Sunday afternoon. The Dolphins appear to be in trouble. I mean, they should bounce back from last week's shutout. They should be better. I believe Tua is going to be back, so that helps. You can definitely start Myles Gaskin as teams have had success against the Raiders on the ground. So go ahead and do that. But I'm really not interested in starting any of the receivers if Tua doesn't start. If Tua starts, man, apparently I've heard that Fuller's going to be back this week. We've also, you've got Waddle and you got Parker. Not sure I would start Fuller for sure because, again, he has been gone. He hasn't been playing with this team. Waddle and Parker are desperation starts only start them if you absolutely don't have anyone better to put in. The Miami pass defense is top 10 against the pass, so that makes me want to sit everybody on the Raiders not named Darren Waller. And the Raiders backfield is a mess. Josh Jacobs may be back. You can't start Drake. You can't start who's the other guy in the backfield that was getting usage? That terrible player. I'm drawing a blank on his name. You know who I'm talking about. The terrible guy that bounces from team to team and is terrible on every team. You can't start anyone in the Raiders backfield right now. So you just got to move them to your bench. Now, finally, we got our fantasy gold mines. And I've got, is it 7 games? 7 games. Fantasy gold mines here. Good, productive games that are going to generate lots of fantasy points. The first one is the Sunday early game. We got the Falcons at the New York Giants. We have both teams with poor defenses and offenses that are capable of scoring points. There are good choices on both sides here. Atlanta's got Calvin Ridley, Kyle Pitts, and Mike Davis. I think they're all starts. I would prefer to keep Cordarrelle Patterson on the bench, but I think he's a good desperation flex play if you need him. And on the New York Giants side, it looks, I mentioned this last week, that it looks like this is an offense on the rise. You've got Saquon, looks like he's coming back. He's probably going to have his best game yet this season, the most usage this season. Last week he was on 85% of the snaps. So they're working him back in. I think it's going to be a really good game. We watched him bust out that 45-yard run. That was pretty much all he did, but that was great to see. Great to see him do that. So I think this is definitely the week you can start him. And let's see here. Sterling Shepard is an automatic start, and I'm also comfortable starting Golladay. He's been making a lot of noise. He doesn't like the usage he's been getting in this offense. He's the squeaky wheel. I think he's going to get targeted. He's going to get more targets. That's what he's asking for. That's going to make him happy. I don't like his connection with Daniel Jones. Obviously, that blow up on the sidelines last week makes me worry, but I think Golladay is one to start here. And I think Daniel Jones is a streaming option at quarterback. This is the kind of defense that you want to play him where he can be very, very productive. And he showed how good he was last week. He was the 3rd highest scoring quarterback overall last week. So he can do it again. Let's see our next game. Chargers at Chiefs. Oh, yeah. This one I'm looking forward to. Obviously, last week, that Chargers-Dallas game was very disappointing. It became much more a defensive struggle in a low-scoring game. But Justin Herbert has always played very, very good against Patrick Mahomes. So I think this is the game that he gets right. I need him to get right for my fantasy teams. I need him to have a big game, and I think he can do it here. Let's see here. What else do I need to say here? Let's see here. All the Chargers are starts, including Allen, Williams, Eckler, and Cook. I think Cook, the tight end, is a good start. Now, as far as the Chiefs go, you start everyone. You start Mahomes, you start Kittle, you start Hill, and I think you can start CEH. I know he has been extremely disappointing through the first 2 weeks of the season, but Chargers D is 9th best for opposing running backs, and I'm willing to give him another chance. I mean, with all the draft capital you spent on him, I'm probably going to give him at least 2 more chances, but this is one. He's got to come through. He's got to produce a decent line this week. Let's hope it happens. The next game is the Bengals at the Steelers. Now, this game is looking a little shakier now. Obviously, Joe Burrow has been struggling, but there's so many offensive assets that he kind of almost can't help but be productive, even if he's terrible. We've also seen the situation in the first 2 weeks, and this is the problem with teams that have 3 viable receivers, is that 2 get the targets and 1 gets ignored. And you're just trying to guess who's going to be the one that gets ignored this week. Last week it was Jamar Chase. Now Jamar Chase did get the touchdown, but he only had like 4 targets, which is not good. But again, I think you can start the receivers. Mixon is a very risky play because you saw what the Pittsburgh team did against Indianapolis, against Jonathan Taylor, held him to like 6 fantasy points last week. So Mixon is a sit if you can do it. You might not be able to. It's too much draft capital you got in him. You got to start him, but I wouldn't expect much out of Mixon this week. You've got a situation where Deontay Johnson is possibly out this week. You also have news today that Ben Roethlisberger is dealing with an injury issue, and he might not start this week. So at first it was like, well, if Deontay Johnson is out, then that's really good for Juju and Chase. But now you got a situation where Deontay might be back, but it's going to be the backup quarterback. So it's really a tough situation to call. I do like Juju and Claypool, and I think they're both starts. And I think Najee is also a start. I think they're going to lean even more on the running game if it is, in fact, the backup quarterback for the Pittsburgh Steelers. We have the Seahawks and the Vikings on Sunday afternoon, 2 teams that are very good at the big play. So I'm very excited about what this game could be. It looks like kind of a desperation game between these 2 underperforming teams. I think one of these, let's see here. I think the Vikings are 0-2 and the Seahawks are 1-1, but the Seahawks are in last place in their division. So it's kind of a desperation game. And like I said, offensive bonanza. There's been so many big plays on both these teams that, for the Seahawks, you start Wilson, you start Lockett, you start Metcalf, you start Carson. And on Vikings, you start Cook and Jefferson and Thielen. I think Cousins is a really good streaming play if you need a quarterback this week. And I think KJ Osborne is a desperation flex if you need him. So all that is good. We've got the Buccaneers at the Rams on Sunday afternoon. And this is a game, I got to tell you, man, it could very well turn into one of the lowest scoring games of the week. But it could also be an offensive bonanza. So I'm putting it in as a gold mine right now because it looks like it should be. But just keep that in mind. We've got 2 really, really good defenses. Probably the 2 best defenses in the NFL, but you also have probably 2 of the most productive offenses going against them. So this should be a good game, but I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being a low-scoring game. This is by far and away Brady's toughest matchup so far, and it'll be interesting to see how he handles the pressure he's going to get from Aaron Darnold. And then just like the Bengals, it appears that the Bucs wide receiver is going to be 2 are going to get targets and 1's going to get ignored. Week 1 it was Mike Evans. Week 2 it was Antonio Brown. Who's it going to be this week? Maybe it's Chris Godwin, but you're gambling anyway. This is the problem with teams with crowded receiver cores like this. Plus, you got Gronk, and Gronk is pretty much the fourth receiver on this team. And although Gronk is due for some regression off of these first 2 weeks, you can't sit him. You've got to play Gronk. The touchdown upside is just too much. He could do another 2 touchdowns this week. So you got to go with that. Let's see here. And then as far as the Bucs run game goes, don't even bother. I wouldn't start anybody on there. And for the Rams, go ahead and start Stafford, Woods, and Kupp, who has just been red hot. I think he's the number 1 receiver right now in the NFL. Unbelievable start to his season. And I think Henderson is a sit. He's still coming back from that injury, but it is a really tough rush defense. Tampa Bay they do not allow a lot of yards. So I think it's kind of a waste to put him into your starting lineup. So keep him on your bench if you can. We've got the Packers at the Niners on Sunday evening, and this is another one that could go either way, man. It could be a fantasy graveyard or goldmine. The Niners have absolutely owned the Packers, just embarrassed them every time they played over the past couple of years. So it's interesting to see and we've seen Green Bay get absolutely dominated by the New Orleans defense. Which Green Bay team is going to show up? They did fantastic in week 2, but that was against Detroit. You expect them to be good against Detroit. So you're going to start Jones, you're going to start Rodgers, you're going to start Tanyan. They all have good matchups. Devontae Adams does have a tough matchup. The Niners defense is 4th toughest against wide receivers, but you're going to play him. But on the other side, Green Bay is 6th toughest against the pass. So, you can start Debo. I wouldn't start any other receivers. Kittle, I need Kittle to come through. Kittle does have a good matchup, so I really need Kittle to show up. And I think Eli Mitchell is also a start on the Niners side. Finally, Monday Night Football. Eagles at the Cowboys. This should be a great game. Great game for fantasy. Dallas defense is a top 10 defense to play against all the key positions. So Hurts, Sanders, Smith, Goddard, they're all great matchups. And I like Goddard because Ertz is on injured reserve, so he's fantastic. There's not enough volume for Rager, so Rager you got to keep on the bench. But the Philly defense has been pretty good, and they are top 10 against quarterbacks and wide receivers. But come on, you're not going to sit Dak. You're not going to sit Liam. You're not going to sit Cooper. And I love Zeke and Pollard this week as well. This should be a great game for fantasy. I'm very excited about it. I'm excited about putting Pollard into my starting position because I got him on one of my leagues. So I'm going to put him in there, see what he does. But there you go. That's it. That's all the games this week. So we've got some really, really good options. Great things for fantasy. Let me know what you think. If you have any questions about these players, and again, tell me about those guys that are giving your fantasy teams problems. And starting next week, we're going to talk about who actually needs to be dropped, because that after 3 weeks, you got a pretty good idea of what your guys are going to do, so you know who you need to drop. So anyway, thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it. A good luck in week 3. I hope it continues to go well for you. I hope my standard points league can somehow turn it around this week. I'm favored to win, but you know what? It hasn't mattered because the team has been so bad with the points. But they're going to turn it around, and all my other teams I'm very confident in. I'm very happy with where they're at right now. So thank you. Have a great day, everybody. Good luck, and we'll talk soon.